Yeah, I'm Michael Connor, Executive Director of Rhizome.org, digital art nonprofit founded in 1996 by artist Mark Tribe and based in New York City and online. We are co-hosting this third season of the Artwrld podcast with Josh. And, this is something we're doing, I guess, kind of as part of our 30th anniversary festivities, as a way of tracing some current, past, and future figures that have shaped what Rhizome's community is. And I'm especially excited to be joined today by Mitchell Chan. Last week we had Joshua Citarella, who talked about the art world system and market from the perspective of someone that has studied political formations and cultural shifts over the past decade in a very interesting way. Mitchell has, in his own work, reflected on some of those same shifts in a very different way. I think maybe he's most well known for a 2017 work called Digital Zones of Immaterial Pictorial Sensibility. Did I get that right? In which he sort of like restaged or rethought a Yves Klein artwork for the blockchain, basically kind of imbuing digital spaces on the blockchain with immaterial artistic sensibilities and then selling them as crypto tokens, ERC20 tokens, which is kind of a unusual format for digital artworks on the blockchain from that time period. And so Mitchell and I guess, got connected because we're both sort of people that have a longer history in digital art, working in this space in different ways, across media, myself as a curator and Mitch as a conceptual artist, but we're also kind of interested in, I guess, those early experiments on the blockchain and have continued to kind of track and follow that conversation as it sort of unfolded. Mitchell started making video games in 2022, and at first I was confused by this because I didn't understand how it related to his prior work. And his first game was, I think, presented and then accessioned by the AKG Museum in Buffalo. It wasn't really until Mitch and I got to go to a very fun one-night exhibition and party at Beeple Studios on Daniel Island in Charleston, South Carolina, which I have to say, highly recommended experience just for the pure weirdness of everything that goes on there. It's like the Hunger Games meets, I don't know, meets Ars Electronica or something. And so Mitchell presented his video game Xantar, absolutely extraordinary piece. It really kind of, I think, spoke to like Mitchell's deep conceptual interest. It felt like watching a structural film in some ways, like Hollis Frampton. But it also really reflected like some current economic and digital conditions and realities that we're all involved in. So really striking piece. And he's here today to talk a bit more about why video games and what that means for artists today. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Mitchell.
Hi, thank you so much for that generous introduction, Michael. Yeah, that was a fun party when we premiered this artwork. And thanks to everybody who I see in the audience. Actually, a lot of names there that I'm just so happy to see your names, and that I also feel like we gotta catch up. But so I'm gonna jump right into it. As Michael said, I've been making video games for about 5 years now. And I think, without going too deep into the presentation, this is this piece, and like this is what it means, and this represents this and that and whatever. I'm just going to talk in broad terms about why. Like, Michael said, well, this is kind of unusual. This guy was doing these kind of blockchain conceptual um, gestures. All right, why go to video games? Um, and I'm going to talk about the reasons why I like to work in this medium, which I think are also the reasons why a lot of other artists like to work in this medium. And I'm going to jump right into it. So while I'm talking, I'm just going to play, this is gameplay footage from some of the video games that I've made. There are three reasons why I think that the video game medium is uniquely suited for artists who are working, kind of in 2026. And I'll organize these reasons according to what I think is kind of least important, but most obvious to kind of most important. I think the number one reason why, and obviously, like I'm not unique in working in this medium. Right now, we're seeing this explosion of exhibitions focusing on video game art. Like I know even in the Artwrld podcast archives, there have been like it was a year ago, 2 years ago, right? Hans Ulrich was talking about video games being an important tool for artists. There are people in the audience. I see Nora there in the audience. She was writing about this since for like 10 years ago. I mean, maybe like maybe more. But it's really exploding now. Partially is because the tooling is becoming more accessible and people can do it. But why? What's the reason? Why should an artist be attracted to this medium? The first reason is really obvious, which is that a video game it's essentially like in 2026, it is what opera was in 1876. All right, artists are making video games for the same reason that Wagner wanted to make operas. In fact, it's not like when you read so many of when artists write their own artist statement about their video artworks, I guarantee you can read like 12 artist statements before you get to the word Gesamtkunstwerk. Like it's gonna be there, right? But a video game, man, I think one of the reasons why artists like to do this is just more. It's just more art. Oh my God, there's so much art you can cram into these things. So you see this. This is my first video game that I ever made, where I was really experimenting with this. Really, again, video games as digital art Wagnerism. Oh my God, look at all the art that I'm cramming into this, man. You got graphics. I made those graphics. Oh, you see that text, that dialogue? I wrote that dialogue, and now I have the sound muted, but there's sound. All right. Oh yeah, you better believe I was loving making those recordings. It's just a lot of art. All the art you can cram in, you can fit it into here, right? And so you got it all: visuals, music, kind of, literature, architecture. It's all there. And I think that's kind of the baseline of what game engine art is right now in 2026. And I am going to emphasize kind of baseline. A lot of art in this medium kind of takes the form of walking simulators, which, if you're not familiar with that term, it's a genre of game. It kind of is what it sounds like. There's an environment. You walk around the environment. It's almost like it's pretty obvious evolution from the idea of the virtual gallery, right? You walk around in space and there are these art artifacts. And I designed that digital sculpture and I designed that digital sculpture and the music swells up here and that. And that's cool. That's a perfectly valid reason to use a game engine as a medium for your artwork, right? A kind of like subcategory of this reason for making art, an idea that's contained in this. There are a lot of artists who I think are using game engines because it's a pretty easy way to get to video art. A lot of artists, particularly some of, I think, the more popular artists working in game engines today, what they're really making is experimental film. Artists like Lu Yong or Ayoung Kim. And if you're interested in making experimental film, this is an awesome tool set to do it. I just saw the Ayoung Kim exhibition at PS1, and actually looking at her first delivery dancer film, really great example, really lays bare exactly where this tool, where like this medium fits into a broader experimental filmmaker tool set. She does a lot of things with in the first film with live action performers, where she needs establishing shots to build out her fictional science fiction world. She goes to game engines. It's a smart thing to do, and the effect is great. Like it really works. Most of the artists who are interested in game engines as an expedient way to get to filmmaking have already pivoted to generative AI. So you see that even in like the later Ayoung Kim films. You certainly see it in Lu Yong. But anyway, that's one of the reasons why artists work in that medium. Oh, right. So me, yeah, talk about myself. This is my first video game that I made. As Michael referenced, I made it for the Buffalo AKG. They were interested in me having a piece where they were interested in me making a piece that would respond to a work in their collection. And so I was like, I decided, all right, museums asking me for something. This is the time to just do something that I've always wanted to do. We'll see if it sucks. Well, they already committed to it. And I'd always wanted to make a video game. So this piece was called Winslow Homer's Croquet Challenge. It's based on a painting by Winslow Homer. It made sense. There's some like real basic like artist logic here. As a painting of a game, I'll make a game about a painting of a game, and it's a video game. It's an artwork. It's about an artwork about a game. I'm like, this is some obviously next level thinking on my part. That's why they pay me the big bucks. But I get to start like now I'm working my way through this first mode of art video games. All right, it used to be just a picture. Now the picture's a painting. But in doing this process, I start to discover by working on it with my hands the other affordances of this medium, right? Because really, this a game is a system, but also a game is a set of boundaries. And becomes a really important theme in my work, right? All games are sort of defined by boundaries, right? Like soccer is, a compelling game largely because like you can't just kick the ball outside of the, kind of like end lines and just run off in whatever direction you want. Basketball, like the ball has to go through like a hoop, which is defined by like an 18-inch diameter, et cetera. Games are about boundaries, video games as well. And what's unique about video games, right, is that particularly in contemporary game design, the goal of a game is that you never see the boundaries. A very popular genre of video game right now is the open world game. All right, something like Grand Theft Auto 5 or Skyrim. And these games are popular based on the idea that you can do anything in these games. You can do whatever you want. I mean, you play Grand Theft Auto 5, you can like shoot a person on the street, you can go to the bathroom, you can buy a cheeseburger. Like they make you believe that you can do anything, right? But really, open world games are just as much about disguising the boundaries of the world, because really there's a fairly finite set of things that you can do, and more importantly, there is a finite set of agencies that you can take on when you play. There is a finite set of motivations that you can take on when you play. If you're playing basketball and your motivation is anything besides putting the ball through the hoop, you're probably doing it wrong, right? But you forget about that. And if you're playing Skyrim and your goal is something besides reaching the next level and leveling up your spells and slaying the dragon, they'll let you do that like to a point. But eventually you will realize that this game is not really set up to keep you in it forever if you're not in that agential mode. So these are the boundaries of the game, and they're really interesting. And I started to notice, what else is like that? Life is also a lot like that. And increasingly, our life is defined by the platforms on which life happens. All right, predominantly the platforms on which life happens, like this Zoom meeting, but it's probably more this effect is probably more apparent when we think about social media platforms or economic platforms, frankly, right? They're all designed to make you take on a certain type of agency and stay within that type of game. You will be a certain type of agent when you are on Instagram, and you'll be the type of agent that prioritizes making the kind of statements, the type of content that get likes, engagement, things like that, right? And so making people aware of the boundaries of the platform, that became an interesting thing for me to do. So like I'll pause this game right now, and in this game I realized, okay, if I'm going to make a game about an artwork, I want to talk about the frames of artwork, like what we mask out whenever we create a so-called idyllic scene of a moment in time, right? Like what are we framing out? We're masking out the economic conditions that allow that game to exist inside its privileged little boundary. So I'm all over the place a little bit here. I apologize, but I started with Winslow Homer's The Croquet Players, which was painted shortly after the conclusion of the American Civil War. The American Civil War, Winslow Homer was intimately familiar with because right before this, he had been documenting the Civil War for Harper's Magazine. And so that finishes up, and you understand the motivations of a guy who would just really like to not think about that and just make some paintings of like nice, rich white people playing croquet. That actually kind of sounds like a nice, relaxing thing to do if you've been documenting the Civil War, right? And so, but a game is not just a structure of that defines like, okay, while you're within these walls, you can you have to do certain things. If you're within these boundaries, you're hitting a ball with a croquet mallet, or if you're within these lines, you're trying to kick a ball into a net, etc. Games are often tied to social clubs, right, and social status. Uh, Croquet in particular was a social phenomenon. This was the boundaries of the game inside which this is one of the reasons why it was very popular at this time in the 1860s. The ladies were allowed to come in and play this. So this is like kind of like a social boundary as well, like that was permeable. So if you were, a young man, you can invite some ladies onto the field. They're playing croquet, or maybe they're hiking up their skirt. You might catch a glimpse of ankle. It was like pretty exciting, sexy time. But it's a social construction as well. It's the definition of a new social boundary as well. Who's inside the boundary? Who's outside the boundary? Art is a masking off of boundaries. Games are masking off of boundaries, like sports games like croquet, and video games are masking off of boundaries. So, as the player, when they play this game, Winslow Homer's Croquet Challenge, most of the time, most of the people who log in, they're told, put the ball through the wicket and you get points. So most of the time, that's what they do. However, if they take the time to orbit the camera around, then they see that this game is enclosed within this sort of golden gilded frame. And they see off in the background, right, there are these prison laborers representing the sort of like broader outside of frame economic conditions that allowed this kind of game to thrive. So now I've moved pretty deep into my conversation about the second reason why I make games. The first reason is just again like it's pure Wagnerism, and it's the reason why I think most artists get attracted to this medium. But it's once you kind of stroke your ego enough and you're like, yes, I can create all the visuals and sound. I am the shaper of worlds. And after you're done patting yourself on the back about that, that's not a good enough reason to do this as art. So the reason that I ended up on after I had some experience using this medium is what I just described, that video games are systems art. Okay, after you've gotten over the novelty of making 3D models and shaders and sound or whatever, if you're making an actual game, not just trying to create cinema out of it, not just trying to create experimental film, not just trying to create a walking simulator like a 3D virtual environment where it's like, oh, look at all these digital things I made. If you sit down and try and make an actual game that's fun to click and play, then you're designing a system. And you're designing a system that you want to trap people in. All right. You're designing a system where you want people to be like not see the boundaries. And that is a really interesting thing to do, because if you do it as an artist, which is to say, if you do it with a critical eye, then you are doing you're doing like a cartoon version of what the sort of like CEOs of all the major tech companies are doing as well. What the designers of other systems that define our lives. You're doing the same thing as them, which means that you can comment on it by making a sort of cartoon version or caricature of it. And that is really interesting to do. Now we're at the point where these are really good reasons to create art like this. The other reason was just to stroke your own ego, and it's really fun and it's cool. But this is a really good reason, because a video game is a system, which means that it is able to comment on the invisible systems that shape our lives. That is what art is supposed to do, right? I was re-listening to your Hans-Ulrich Obrist interview that he did about video games, right? He's fond of repeating this quote by Paul Klee: "The purpose of art is to make the invisible visible." Well, the invisible things in our world that really matter are these systems and structures of control. And the way that these systems and structures of control are thriving in our world today is they look fun. They look really fun. It's so fun to be on Instagram. The videos are so funny and I get the likes and all this, right? It's so fun to be on, like it's so Uber, you work in the gig economy and you set your own hours and then like you get into this kind of flow state of like one gig comes up and then you put down your ride and there's another ride right there. The designers of the economic systems that are shaping, right, our economy and our financial system right now have learned so much from games, right? They've gamified this economy so much. So this is a really interesting thing to do. What you're seeing on the screen right now is my second big artwork. My second big video game artwork is a piece called The Boys of Summer. And it was about the ways that this gamification of our lives, the gamification of the economy, is enabled by the quantification of self. So this is, I won't go so much into this, but this was the way that this game works and once again, look at me, man, I'm doing the games. It's about games. So it presents itself as a baseball management simulator and you get these characters and you get to kind of put points in your attributes of like contact and power and running and throwing and that's what baseball is about, right? Baseball's all about statistics, so you put your points in your attributes and you get statistics on your batting average, your home runs, your stolen bases, etc. But the game goes on. There's a little bit of a narrative. I like writing these short narratives in my games. And as the game goes on, of course, you move up levels of baseball and higher levels of baseball keep track of more advanced statistics. Baseball nerds will know what I'm talking about. Wins above replacement, all right, ultimate zone rating, your OPS, your on base plus slugging percentage. This is kind of the world. This is the state of baseball fandom as it exists right now. But then your character kind of falls out of the baseball circuit. They're typically not good enough to be a professional baseball player. And the points that you're assigning to like your schedule are defining new statistics, things about you that are measured, right? Like your SAT score. All right. You work at Amazon, and Amazon keeps very detailed statistics on their players' performance. And of course, how you perform at Amazon determines like your income level, which determines your most important statistic over there on the front of, and on the center of the screen, your net worth. And so it's about, one character's life as just an accumulation of statistics. Data becomes literally the visual representation up on our screen, replacing, the kind of cute cartoon character that was there. And when things become data, they're begging to be gamified, right? You see numbers, you want them to be optimized, you want them to go up. You kind of go into that agential mode. And so Boys of Summer was an artwork that was about that. It was my second big video game, and it was the one where I'm really learning like how to make games that are that are kind of cartoon versions of economic systems in our world. Um, so this idea that I have, right, about games, mirroring systems in our world, is one that's kind of become more popular in academic circles. This is a professor at the University of Utah called C. Tai Win, who wrote this book called Games Agency is Art, which is a great read for anybody who's interested in artwork like that. And it's talking generally about the benefits of games, but it takes as like it takes sort of for granted that yes, when you play a game, you willingly adopt a different agential mode, right? When you and I play chess, we decide the most important thing is to capture each other's king. This is an absurd motivation to have in the other 99% of our lives, but that's what we do. That's what a game is. It's willingly relinquishing your old values and motivations to take on another with the promise that if you do that, you will have some fun, right? And that is such an interesting superpower to take on as an artist. And it is such an interesting thing to think about ways that other people have capitalized on this phenomenon, that people will willingly give up their previous agential mode, their previous motivations, if you just promise them there will be some fun in it for them. So that was hugely influential. I said I write about this stuff from time to time. I wrote an essay for Outland about how I think how art games work. This is like another little cartoon that explains my idea, right? All of us exist in this world where, up in this comic strip, the top left panel, you see these two people playing ping pong. and they're really hot shit. You know, they can put spin on the ball, they can go far court, they hit a drop shot. You know, they are exerting all this control over this thing that they're playing, right? But the ping pong game happens on literally on a platform, and the platform is on a bullet train, and the bullet train is steering down tracks that you didn't lay and that you didn't ask for. And that is kind of how like agency works. Like this is how all of us exist in this world of hyper capitalism right now, where relative like to an objective viewer, it really doesn't matter what kind of fancy drop shots or spin shots you're doing on that ping pong table. To an objective observer, the ball is just barreling down the tracks. That's kind of my visual metaphor. Um, so that's the second big reason that I believe in making games. They are uniquely able to echo the systems that define our day-to-day life. The third reason why I choose to make art in this medium is it's pretty basic, it's pretty straightforward, but it is probably the most important one, which is just access, like access and democratic presentation. I create all of my games to be exported to WebGL so that they can run as web apps. So that nobody requires any specialized like gaming hardware. You do not need to have a PlayStation. You do not need to have a Nintendo Switch. You do not need to have a big honking gamer PC with like an NVIDIA 8000 and like RGB lights. You don't need any of that stuff. One of the things, and this is so obvious that I like feel embarrassed even saying it, but I do because people aren't doing this stuff. The advantage of digital art should be its potential for broad reach. Um, I do a lot of soul searching about this every single day. And every single day, I do somehow manage to drag myself to the conclusion yes, I believe in art. Like, yes, I believe that it's important. You know, some days it's hard for me to draw myself there, but I manage to get there every day. And art is important because it perpetuates a way of existing in this world where one is supposed to think slowly and with generosity, and consider that the thing in front of them can have a multiplicity of meanings, and that that is a really important like agential mode like to promote in this world. And it's cool to make digital art that can exist for anybody at anyone, for anybody anywhere in the world at any time. And so that's kind of where that comes from. I get really frustrated when artists work in this medium, and I can't like download their games from their website or like they're like off Steam or whatever. Like, god damn it, like digital artists, make your work public, you cowards. You know, like what are you doing? Um, but it's just a thing that it's a thing that I believe in. Anybody should be able to have access to this stuff for relatively low cost. I mean, even if you want to charge $10 for it on the Steam store or itch.io, like go for it, you know. But if this stuff is important, we have this nice ability to share it with just about anybody who wants it. I'll give it like just a brief overview of this artwork, and then we'll jump into questions. Is that okay, Josh? All right. This is my most recent artwork. My most recent artwork came out just last year in May. We premiered it at the gallery Winwa Head in New York City, and since then, I showed it at Freeze Seoul and West Bund in Shanghai. And my latest artwork is a suite of 4 video games. This is one of them. It is called Lady Boss, and here I'm just this I kind of started because I was interested in just playing a little bit with the formal tropes of video games. Can I do narrative in video games a little bit differently? Can I do storytelling in video games a little bit differently? Narrative, like linear narrative, is not something that the art world tends to really like. So it makes me feel like a cheeky little guy to be doing it in my video game artworks. But this is a game, and once again, it's about finding the sort of metaphorical value in game loops, and then extracting that metaphorical or symbolic value of a gameplay loop into a narrative and then into an experience. So this is a short story. What you're seeing right now, this is a short story, and it's a short story about a fictional character. Her name is Sally Moon for You. Sally Moon for You is a video game streamer, and so she participates in the creative economy. And the story begins. She feels a lot of autonomy and empowerment in the game economy. Of course, she gets to set her own hours and do like whatever she wants and play a game that she really likes for money. And like all that she has to do is engage with her audience and make sure that those likes keep coming. And so in this game, you're playing out a sort of like metaphor for that. The character here, they go on stream and all these likes come in, you collect the likes, and then when you go off stream, you exchange the currency of likes, the social currency, for hard currency. You'll exchange your hearts for coins. As the narrative unfolds, Sally Moon for You experiences some changes to her life, which make the kind of engagement she used to have with her predominantly male audience more challenging. And Sally Moon for You discovers that her life was perhaps like not as free as she had previously believed, but was in fact entirely on rails, existing within a very, very tightly defined economic structure, which is, of course, echoed in the structure of the Endless Runner gameplay format. So it's an endless runner about a person whose life is metaphorically an endless runner. Metaphor, and you love to see it. Again, why they pay me the big bucks. Um, and so that was one of 4 artworks I released last year. The kind of centerpiece of all this was a piece called Xantar, to which Michael was referring in his introduction quite generously. And all these pieces are available on my website. Xantar is a sort of half video game, half piece of experimental cinema. I describe it as an artwork that is created right directly between the poles of the 2 great Canadian Michaels, Michael Snow, best known for his experimental film Wavelength, and Mike Myers, best known for his experimental film Wayne's World. And the piece Xantar is kind of what happens whenever you spend too much time watching both of them. And instead of just showing this as a video on a Zoom chat, I encourage you all to enjoy digital art, and you can go to the website and log on. If you have 20 minutes, most of my artworks, they take about 20 minutes to go through. And that's a nice time for a developer. And yeah, and that's why I make them and why I think other people should make art like this too.
Amazing, Mitchell.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
I can't believe I said Hollis Frampton when I meant Michael Snow. I feel so embarrassed. I can't, I'm so embarrassed. Yeah, that was
Shame.
amazing.
Shame.
I can I ask 2 quick questions to get us started and then hand it over to Josh?
Yeah.
My first question for you, Mitchell, is that I think that this question of agency in games is really interesting. And I feel like it's been kicking around for a long time, but in a slightly different format than the way that it appears in your work. And maybe an exemplary work from that agency conversation would be something like Moli Industria's Democratic Socialism Simulator,
Hmm.
2008, where you play as the president, the first socialist president of, I think, the United States. So that work maybe is even already like a kind of hybrid example, but in the past, there was a lot of interest in the idea of exploring different kinds of agency in the video game world to explore like more open-ended possibilities, like a kind of LARP where we can like achieve like a more utopian society by changing some rule sets and like working together in a different way and seeing what happens. So like, what is your relationship with like the idea of trying to like model agency in games? Like, does that type of work seem more dishonest? Are you more interested in revealing the hidden system than in like giving people the tools to change it? Is there a way that you could get to that place as well?
Yeah. Okay. The answer to that is actually it's kind of practical, to be honest. Which is like, so am I more interested in, yeah, like revealing the ways that we're fenced in, right, or giving people the tools to break out? And it's always, I think, for an artist, especially like an individual artist, like creating software, to like create the sensation of what a greater state, a greater range of choices would look like, what a higher agential state would look like. it's actually just practically not feasible for an artist, right? And it's like if the 3,000 programmers at Rockstar Games like can't do it with Grand Theft Auto 6, like I sure can't do it myself. Um, so I just find it's a little bit of a quixotic task to try to create a model of the utopia, because we're like the utopia is the only thing I can point people to is like turn the game off, like turn the machine off, like turn your phone off, go for a walk, touch grass, right? But also it is, I think, within the tradition of digital art and generative art in particular, like I'm a big fan of the type of digital art that exposes its boundaries. Like that is the one thing that I know digital art can do really, really well. Like a good piece of generative art, it's not about a single output, right? It is you go through enough outputs so that the structure, the system that produced it becomes apparent. For me, this is like a tried, tested, and true way of making art, and that's just what I can do, because I can't. And this, listen, man, it's another thing. Like I can't solve the problem, which maybe sounds like a little bit like a little bit of a jerk, but like makes me sound rude. But I'm not just trying to be like snide and dismissive, kind of smoking cigarettes in the back of the room. I do believe that there's genuine value in showing those boundaries. But no, I don't think that you can like I'm just so skeptical of any art project that is like, and this art project is a model for like a better utopian way of living. Like I cannot be prescriptive like that. I can't, like that'd be so ridiculous of me. Like I'm just like I can show you the conditions that we live in, and then we can kind of make our own decisions.
Love it. Oh, hey, Mitch, you want to hide the screen share so we can see?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
let's do it. Let's do it. We're going into face mode.
Okay, face mode.
I feel like my other question might come up in the Q&A, which is really just thinking about how you relate to like art markets and digital art market.
Mhm.
We could go there, or we could do the question in the chat. What do you want to do, Josh?
Nah, not like let's talk about art markets real quick, and
Yeah,
then we'll
we,
uh, then
we
we'll
talk,
we'll jump to Tamara had a question. She just went on screen. So all right,
I know it's really important
Michael's
to you.
then Tamara. We'll do it.
Yeah, so I know it's really important to you to keep your work available online, which, I've always had the position myself. We can have markets that support artists and are fair and also still keep the work available and not enclosed. Um, but yeah, how are you kind of navigating like the idea of like selling your work and also having it available online?
Fair question. And the answer is like it's an ongoing process. Like there are, oh man. The truth is I don't have any like smart answers that are really applicable to
Or
anybody
how
else.
about even just a practical answer? So like Boys of Summer, people
Oh
could
yeah.
buy a token to play.
Yeah. Okay, you're right. You know what?
And then
You
like
know what? Oh my
Xantar, which
gosh,
is an
I can't
issue.
believe I forgot that. Actually, I do have smart things to say about this. How foolish of me to doubt that. There are a couple models you can use, right? The Christo and Jean Claude model is tried, tested, and true. I'm going to make a big public piece of software that is for everybody, and you can buy sketches or ephemera from the process of creating that. That's a model that actually works pretty well with NFTs in that model, like in that mode of commodifying digital art. So that can work, and I can create like what's really nice. I do generate prints from this software, and when I generate prints, like what's nice is that it's not just a screen grab. Like I don't just go like Command 3 or like Command F4 or something while playing the game. That would be like a little bit cheap. But because I have pretty fine grained control over my aesthetics. Just from designing my own shaders and aesthetic code. So I will like set up a scene and I will kind of tweak all of the aesthetics to produce a really high quality output, like at like a big large format print size, and so I can sell those, and so that can help. The other thing, so that's tried, tested, and true, the Crystal and Jean Claude model. The other thing that I can do, that I'm trying to do, is I do believe that like recognition and recognition inside the software ought to be a really good incentive for patrons of the arts and art collectors. I believe that there are there's a considerable number of collectors out there, and they want to buy the artwork, and then they want to donate it to a museum. And the big payoff is that on the wall text, it'll say, Xantar by Mitchell Chan, gift of, Josh Goldblum family. And hey, like that's cool, and so I've used the blockchain to allow for collector recognition inside the software. And that collector recognition, because it's on the blockchain, like it's portable, it travels with the software no matter what platform it's going to be presented on. And it's like on the title screen of these games, it says Xantar 2025, gift of Josh Goldblum family. And that's worked in some cases so far. I would say it's kind of too early. I don't have enough test cases to say whether it's really working or going to take off, but I had a little bit of success with that. So hopefully that keeps going.
Fantastic. Tamara, you had a question. All right. She was camera on for a second there. Let's see. Oh, she's back. Let's do it.
Sorry about that. So I'm a professor and I haven't done any of this type of work in the past. I'm typically teaching graphic design courses, but I do have a little bit of experience with AR. I guess I'm wondering, how do I get started and how would I teach this in the classroom? Like what are the fundamentals that students need to learn?
So I will tell you my whole journey. I went to unity.com and I clicked on the learning tab and I was like, ultra beginner, episode 1, let's go. And like that's what I was doing. And I started that, I guess, like before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic happened, I had a lot more time to go through it. And and that was it. The learning resources like do exist. It's one of the nice things about working with I work in the Unity game engine, as opposed to, there are artists who, for various reasons, want to use Unreal Engine, which I don't know much about, or like Godot or Game Maker Plus, if they're kind of more like indie, kind of inclined. But working with a big popular software means that there's just tons of learning resources online, and it literally is just like I started at lesson 1, and it's quite fun to learn because it's just like every time I learn something, it's just like, oh cool, now my little box moves around the screen, oh and now I can shoot it with my little laser gun. This is really, oh look, I'm learning. It's great.
Mitch, I'm gonna add just one other thing too. Um, Claude and like ChatGPT are actually quite good at at onboarding people to this stuff. Like it knows a lot.
Yeah, and so here's a really fun thing about Claude and Chat GPT. I have friends who are getting Claude to like write games like in React, like web-based games, and Claude is one-shotting it. Like just they say what they want, it comes out. Claude and ChatGPT, they're pretty bad at Unity C Sharp. They're pretty bad at HLSL, right, and graphics programming. This makes me feel really good. Like I feel so good about myself when I'm like correcting like Claude and ChatGPT, and it can't do things, and I know how to do it and Claude doesn't know how to do it. It's a great ego boost. But what it is great for, as Josh says, is so you do lesson 1, like you do lesson 1 on the like Unity Learn website, and obviously like there is so much boilerplate code in the background designed to just get your first basic Hello World game up and running. And the software is great. Like it masks all that from you. But you are a curious person, or your students are curious people, and they're going to be pulling back layers that they shouldn't pull back. And they're going to see these files in the file explorer and be like, what's that? Okay. And it is pretty great to have Claude in another window to ask, what is that? Like what is controlling my frame rate really? And that's like that's a week 27 question. But Claude will be very patient with you, and he'll take you there.
All right.
Yeah,
Callie has a question, and then Kevin has or Michael, did you have a question? Did you want to jump in?
No, I was just chatting,
Oh, all good, all good. Okay. Oh, Callie wants me to ask. Okay, here we go. Quick question. Would you be open to discussing AR, VR, and immersive formats within the exhibition of this work? Or is that something you've explored, or is that something you're interested in?
Oh no, I haven't explored it just again because the opportunity hasn't really arisen. I am like extremely platform agnostic as a practical matter and also as an ideological matter. Just kind of have to try everything and see what works.
Great. All right, Kevin, you have a question.
Yes, hello. I can turn on my camera.
Hey,
Hi,
Kevin.
Mitch. How's it going?
Good. Nice to see you.
That was my question. No, I'm just kidding. I had a question. So you you were talking about the importance of accessibility, making the games free to play. I've written about your work before, and one challenge in writing about it, and it's not a bad challenge, but it's like a just a fact is. Well, this is the thing with a lot of criticism. I guess this is true of literary criticism and film criticism for sure, where it's like you have to spend a lot of time for your reader narrating what the thing is, and the more time you spend doing that, the less time you have to talk about what it could mean or how it's operating. How do you think
Yeah.
about that from the artist end of it? Like the Xantar games are great, but the understanding that you can have about what they're doing, what they're saying, what they could mean, these larger questions is totally different for someone who has actually taken the time to play them versus
Yeah.
somebody who hasn't or has just like or has like dipped in or just kind of like walked by it in a gallery and like got like a blush of sort of the aesthetic of it, but that's it.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, this isn't entirely unique to the kind of thing that you're doing. But I think when it comes to sort of like literary criticism or whatever, there's kind of or film criticism, there's you know a community of people who are kind of like we're going to read all the hot books and then we can all talk about them. We're going to watch all the
Hmm.
movies that are up for these awards and then we can all talk about them. But you're kind of at this intersection where you maybe don't have like the people who play all the AAA video games, like tuned into what
Yeah.
you're doing, but then the contemporary
Yeah.
art people are kind of like, what's he doing over there? I don't know. So yeah, I guess like how do you approach that challenge?
I mean, so I'm very cognizant of it. Um, I I don't have a solution for it yet, but I comfort myself by reminding myself that it's a second order problem, right? Like in the sense that like it's a problem that is produced by like it's a negative side effect of I think mostly things that I believe in and like I wouldn't change. So therefore I accept it, which is that these are like big experiential pieces. And like I'm fortunate that while, as you point out, it's difficult to write about because you got to spend so much time describing what the thing is that you don't have very much time to write about whether it's actually any good or like what's interesting about it. But I comfort myself by saying at least, people will have the opportunity to experience what it is for themselves. It can put a writer in the unfortunate position that too much writing and too much criticism is in at the moment, where like the writing has to be aware, has to make it a goal to funnel people to the actual experience instead of like getting to just write about it. It's a problem that I hope gets solved organically in time. Because as you point out, like when a genre or a medium gets popular enough, like they have communities of people in the book club who have all are all gonna, at least going to pretend to have read the book, right? Who have all played the video game. And like, so the hope is that eventually, if things play out right over the next 10, 15 years, we can get a higher level of discourse because this type of work is more accessible than the paintings that are in
Right.
the museum or something like that. But it's obviously not a given that we get there. And I guess it's just like, yeah, man, I got to get a lot more thirsty out there in social media. I got to really chase some fame to get enough people out there, creating the community of who
Hustle.
can engage with it on that level.
Yeah. But
Well,
I
like with oh, sorry, go on, Michael. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, please.
Like with Xantar though, um, like the kind of reveal, the narrative arc of
Mhm.
the game. Like I think someone mentioned this earlier. Like, and I encourage people also to take like 20 minutes to play it In the world of video games, having that sort of like, oh, you've kind of done the whole thing in about 20 minutes.
Mhm.
Like that's actually
Mhm.
extremely short. But for an art gallery, that's fairly long. So like that's what I was wondering. It's like, are you thinking about like, well, what if I, made a game that would take days to play? But then if you did that, obviously there's like this huge trade-off.
Yeah, and I don't think that, again, practical reasons. I do like, I'm not shy about admitting the moments when my art practice is hemmed in by purely practical considerations. Like, I'm just a guy sitting in his basement. Like I can't make like a 30-hour long like experience. Um and I do also really like the sharpness that comes with that constraint, to be honest. It means that I got to keep my ideas tight, and I really have to think about like a single formal mechanism that is going to encapsulate my idea. And hey, you know what? That's the job of an artist. And so I'm like not bitter at all about that job, about having to be like succinct and concise to say what I want to say. And
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Mitch, in your it's sort of like one of the ideas you often have talked about in our conversations is getting artist games into the kind of into the kind of major video game stores, into people's
Mhm.
homes on console. And I think your comment just now points to like one of the limitations of that, which is the information ecosystem is so bad. So once it's there, getting people to actually play it requires like some other way to talk to them. And right now, we only have these like highly manipulated, like AI slop filled, high pressure social media environments to talk to them through. Very bad. So I think there is scope for like the kind of experiential model, like of, buy a ticket, take the ride in a physical place where people can gather or something. And I would encourage you to make a two-player game.
That is a great idea. I would love to do that. I have not yet done the lesson online on like setting up multiplayer games. Maybe that's the next tutorial that I do. I always do
Yeah,
like
something you can
tutorials
go
in
with
between
your friends,
projects.
play together, I think in a space where you buy a ticket for 20 minutes.
Yeah. You know
That's
what? That's a pretty good one. I may take that suggestion. It's a very good one.
Mitch, can I give you another suggestion?
Yeah, please.
I know a ton of developers that totally know how to do this. If you don't want someone who's like,
Yeah.
if you don't want to learn it yourself, it's like,
Yeah.
you're like a solo singer songwriter. Like, there's bands, man. There's like,
Yeah.
I can hook you up with some folks that can help you write a 3-day song.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay, Tim has a question. Quick question.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Tim, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Um, what is your so I mean, I have to admit, I'm sort of skeptical of art, video game
Good.
art. All
Oh,
right.
okay. Well, that's fine too. Yeah.
Like the video games that I've played, I want to consider them art. Maybe like Monument Valley gets a little close, but that's
Mhm.
even kind of like not really. Um, well, from the way I look at it. So I'm curious, Mitch. So like, what should, aside from your own work, what should I go and play to like kind of help me get into this genre, or maybe see parts of it that I haven't like understood yet?
Right. Yeah, and it tends to be like, so I don't like to do the thing of being like, oh, this video game's art. And when somebody says that like, oh, something is art, but what they really mean is that like it's really good, or it is like the sort of apex of its own particular genre. And no, I will still define art like broadly. Yeah, like let's open up this conversation with 90 seconds left to go. But like, something that eschews functionality and instead prioritizes the advancement of some sort of thesis about the world around them, and exists like not, that doesn't make your entertainment or distraction its primary focus. And so the pieces that I look at, Robert Young, Radiator, just wonderful artist who I think does just amazing work about queer identity that I think is so much better because it is a video game. And this is the thing. It's not like it's like video game art that happens to be about queer identity. Like it is work about queer identity that really benefits from being in this like immersive first person perspective. That stuff is awesome. A lot of this other stuff is just like, and again, I'm not going to sit down and play it like the way I would play Super Mario or like the way I would play Grand Theft Auto. These are gestures that I spend like 5 minutes with, and I have an aesthetic experience, and I think a little bit about the world, right? Cassie McQuater's piece, Zoo Tycoon, available as a web app right now. And like the point is not to play the game like a game. The point is just be in an aesthetic experience where you can click around. And by the way, this is going to be the default. This is already like the default way that young kind of Gen Alpha kids engage with visual culture, right? They can't just look at something without having a fidget spinner in their hand. One ways that I've described a lot of my recent work is that they're just sort of like, it's just like a story with a fidget spinner attached to it. So it's very practical to do things like that. So that is a great example. And then something that leans more art, like more game heavy, but that I will still consider to be a piece of art. I think Kentucky Route Zero is one of the great artworks released in my lifetime, full stop. It just happens to have done pretty darn commercially well as a video game. It's created by 3 graduates from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, who are clearly just so interested in making a statement about debt and financialization in like the style of magical realism. Those are the three great places to start. That's where I would start, ranging from like the most indie art world to the most mainstream.
If only someone could make some sort of diagram of video art, like a simple video game diagram.
I think
Because-
Mitch should definitely do that for sure.
Okay, I will. Actually, that'd be fun.
All right. So
You should
Thanks,
read
Mitch.
this question. I don't think we
Oh
have
no
time-
no wait so wait but here's the thing, we're at time, but this is good because this segues into Mitch's my last question for Mitch, which is, since we have these questions lingering and there's obviously a conversation to be had, Mitch, how can people get in touch with you? How can we continue this conversation? How can we be useful to you, and vice versa?
Oh, you know what? Follow me on the least evil social media platform that you can find me on, like your choice. And I can be pretty slow and stuff on that. And then give me a call. Like just give me a call. Stop by my house. Just stop by my house, say hi. We'll go for lunch. Let me take you out for lunch.
Lunch is the big
Yeah.
thing.
We talked about
Yeah,
lunch.
just let me